I am headed down Highway 12, east again. Just got out of Hettinger, North Dakota. I'm once again, because a lot of the trip looks like this, I'm going excuse me, going to cut out some swaths. So I'm re-recording the audio. I didn't upload it Sunday morning because I just had to listen to it one more time. I have one neighbor who is putting new siding on his house. Another neighbor was running some kind of machine in his backyard. I don't know what, but it was running on and turn it off, run it again, and oh my God, was that loud. And then another neighbor started mowing his lawn, and you could hear all that. And especially the one installing new siding, it's just like the microphone liked that sound. And then you couldn't understand me, and I don't get it. I don't understand microphones, but anyway, I have all my windows open because it's summer, and that's what you do in the summer, and I don't have air conditioning. But it's evening now, so I'm going to try and record this all again. So last video I did was very dystopian, and I don't like leaving things that way. Now, I write science fiction for fun. I do kind of enjoy a slightly dark vision, just because it's more fun to write in, I guess. But as far as when I teach or when I present something, I like to give some hope. So maybe my last video was the dystopian, depressing, oh my gosh, we're all going to die video. This is the more hopeful part of it. Personally, I think the real world is going to end up somewhere in between. I'd like it to go this utopian direction, but probably won't. And I will pause here and there during this video to take you through a couple small towns, because that's something I enjoy, is touring little small towns. So we'll tour, let's see, Lemon, I guess, in this video, and North Lemon, and we'll go through Morristown and Watauga. So if I'm going to give you some utopian thoughts, I suppose I should start out by defining what a utopia is. And it's pretty much defined as a perfect place. Now, realistically, we're dealing with human beings. It's not going to be perfect. By the way, before I define more, when you see the road change suddenly to a much lower quality road, we are crossing the border into a third world country known as South Dakota. There was a book written by Sir Thomas More back in, let's see, where's my notes, 1516, called Utopia. And it was, if you actually read the thing, I tried, see, now we're in a third world country, we're in South Dakota. If you actually read the thing, I don't know if I'd want to live there. It's a very managed, very top-down kind of future. I mean, some things about it were good, but from what I understand, there are a lot of people that think it was actually written somewhat as satire, because he was speaking up in favor of divorce and things that he really wasn't, if you know Sir Thomas More's history. In fact, he was executed somewhat tangentially, but over the issue of divorce. If you want some history of Sir Thomas More, there was a movie made in the 60s. I haven't read, if it's based on a book, I've not read it, but the movie is called A Man for All Seasons. It's a classic, and the same director, Fred Zinnemann, did several classic movies, and yeah, quite a good movie. Not very happy ending, but a good movie. I guess I just told you the ending, didn't I? He dies. Gets beheaded, actually. But anyway, anytime you talk about a utopia, one of the problems you're always going to run into is people are not perfect. So when I tell you about my vision for a utopia, keep that in mind, that it's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to solve all problems. My vision for a utopia is with the idea that it's not going to be perfect. So let's jump on to my second point, which is a big theme in my dystopian was that machines are going to take jobs. True story. Now, yes, machines will take jobs. But let's look at the other side of that. For one thing, when machines take jobs, can make life better. I would really rather not do this driving. I'd rather read a book or, take pictures or something as I'm driving, not mindlessly drive some machine. Also, machines really increase productivity. I think if I had, I enjoy the physical aspect of digging my garden, but honestly, I could dig a bed, maybe 2 beds. I'd be happy. That's enough digging. I've got the physical aspect. Now I just want to plant. So if I had a machine, a rototiller, I could do all that. And I could get the garden to where I want it rather than just doing a little bit each year. A machine would make all that possible. And what it does, because it takes away that manual labor aspect, it frees me up to do my human side, which is planning out the garden. How do I want to plant it? What do I want to put where? Weeding it, which honestly, if you have a garden, that's a big piece of it. Strategizing, harvesting, and so on. That's the part I want to do. So the machines actually increase your productivity. In fact, jobs in general are increasing productivity. I'm going to put a link down here to a YouTube video by, I forget his first name. Kasparov is his last name. He's a chess champion who actually, one of the things he's well known for is playing against an IBM chess computer and losing. Well, as he points out in the video, one of the reasons he lost is when he plays a human opponent, he can read them. When he plays a computer, what do you read? You can't, there's no face, no emotion, no nothing. And the computer does not play the same way a human does. The computer has resources for a lot of different chess moves that have been made and so on. So you put the human and computer together for a job. They both do the parts that they do well. You can get a lot more out of the job. So I think that's where what we're going to see. A lot of jobs will change, and I think education needs to be a component of that. Maybe we need to make education a lot more available, not just for kids in high school and elementary school, but for adults too. So it is easier for them to change professions. I'm also going to give you a link of the 30 fastest growing jobs, at least as of the time the article was written. As some jobs are fading away, other jobs are growing. Physical therapists, at home, what was it called? I can't remember the name for the profession. My mother actually did this for a little while because she thought she had to in order to get Social Security. At-home medical care. Basically, older people, and we're getting more and more of them. That's just a demographic thing. Rather than putting them in nursing homes, one of the best things is if you can stay at home, and maybe somebody comes in once a week or something to do cleaning and some of that home type stuff that you're no longer able to do, and then you're able to stay in your home longer rather than rely on expensive assisted living or whatever. Home health care? Doggone, I should have written it down. But anyway, there are other jobs that are growing, and at various educational levels too, as you look through the list. So yes, there are other jobs that are increasing. And of course, because of machines, our productivity is a lot greater now. So that's the bright side of machines. Now, in my dystopian video, I mentioned something called basic income. And I had an interesting comment from someone, I don't remember the name of the commenter, but they're from New York State. Anyway, they mentioned, what about guaranteed employment? Because there are, I'm sure in your town too, I know in my town, there are jobs that need to be done. Now, true story, where I live right now, North Dakota, unemployment isn't really an issue. In certain pockets of North Dakota, yes, it's a big issue, but in the pocket where I live, no. businesses struggle for employees. In fact, some of the restaurants here were reducing hours because they just couldn't find workers. But she just mentioned the idea of guaranteed jobs. I like that idea because I think there is something to being needed and having that schedule and having, well, a job. You know, just that pride of taking care of yourself instead of just being taken care of. My only worry with that is becoming workfare, which is kind of like slave labor. You know, I don't have a good answer, but I did like the concept. In fact, she had some neat ideas, like a tool library. I would love that. You know, I'm talking about a rototiller for my garden. I really don't want to buy one, because honestly, what am I going to do with it for most of the year? Nothing. It's going to sit there in my shed taking up space. Now, if I could share a rototiller with several other gardeners, suddenly my share of it becomes worthwhile. But, of course, who takes care of it? Who houses it? What happens when one of us quits gardening or moves or whatever? You know, that's... I'd like to just be able to rent one for a day or two and call it good. But, anyway, so you know, she had some interesting concepts, and I definitely see work around town that needs doing. I see trees that need pruning. I'm sorry, I'm the son of a forester. I notice stuff like that. North Dakotans often don't, other than the decorative sense, because North Dakotans look at trees quite differently than a forester in Pennsylvania does. But, you know, I'd like to see a lot of things. But I'm going to pause here because we're coming into Lemon, South Dakota. Lemon's kind of a nifty little town of, oh, let's see, I wrote down its population here somewhere. 1,240 people. So it's a smaller town. Like my town, the grocery store, which I can't remember if we passed it yet or not. It's moved since I was last in Lemon. Used to be on Main Street. Oh, we've passed it. Used to be on Main Street. Now is moved out of town. It seems to be a trend, and it's a trend I don't like. These big box stores, rather than be on Main Street, they want to build a much larger building, which, okay, I will concede that is nice. And it is nice to be able to have better loading bays and so on. But they build a big store. You have to drive to it. And what they do is each one needs to have a parking lot. So now, especially if they space them out the way some of the ones in Fargo do, or Dickinson, or Minot, or pretty much anywhere, you can't really walk from one to the other, so you have to drive these short little hops. Now, honestly, I do have 3 big box stores right in a row. At least they are smaller, because it's a small town, so you can actually walk from one to the other, although a lot of people don't. But anyway, and another thing you'll notice with the small towns here, and some of you have remarked on this, they're small, but they seem to have a lot of business for a small town. Well, there's a really good reason. Distance. We are, honestly, in Lemon too, Lemon probably even more than my town, we are shielded by distance. It's just such a long drive to get anywhere that you have a lot more businesses in the small towns than you ordinarily would. I'm going to flip over to footage I took the week before. The driving footage was useless from this trip because I was driving into the sun, but the tours through all the towns is worthwhile. So putting the two together, so at least I get something out of it. So anyway, what was I talking about? I just distracted myself. So anyway, these small towns tend to have a lot more in them than a typical, town this size around Philadelphia would have nothing. It would just be a bedroom community. But because Lemon is so far out there, and it is, research it, it's out there. It has cool things like this. This is a petrified park. It's all made out of petrified wood. In my inspiration video, I took you on a walk through it. It's very interesting. I almost put that footage in here, but then I thought I used it once, so go find the inspiration video. It's there. And actually, this park is a pretty good example of something else I'm going to be bringing up. This whole idea of craftsmanship. That park was built by artisans with free time. So I want to come back to that. So on my topic, we're going down Main Street, Lemon. It's struggling just like my town. Has some businesses my town doesn't. My town has some businesses Lemon doesn't. You know, horse apiece. Overall, my town has more in it, but Lemon is a nice town. I think for places to eat, Lemon is better than my town, honestly. Just because it has more of them, but then again, they're mostly bars, so I'm not into that kind of thing. Anyway, while I was on the topic of basic income, what you need is you need to be making enough money to live. Means you can pay rent at least, pay for your food, but then you need a little extra, and then you'll put it back into the local economy if you have a little extra money. You know, there have been a lot of studies done on happiness. You do need that basic level of income to get by and be content. When you go beyond that, added income does not necessarily mean increased happiness. Well, that's one of the things you need, is that enough income to be happy. So in my utopia, we need to find a way to accomplish that. And I'm not 100% there yet, how to pull that off. You know, do we have a minimum wage that's, well, definitely needs to be higher than it is now? You know, how do we do that? And one of the things I've come up with is do we have this increasing wage gap in this country? I see a problem when a company puts its shareholders ahead of its workers. Here's a kind of an interesting thing. We are going to cross the railroad tracks here, and you're going to find yourself, I remember I made fun of South Dakota being a third world country. Well, now we're going to cross the tracks into a third world country called North Dakota. This is a town called North Lemon. Yes, it's right there by Lemon, but it's on the other side of the state line. And the streets in North Lemon are not paved. North Lemon is the low-income part of Lemon, let us say. You know, I don't know if survey lines or what it was that did that. Oh, deer. Okay, I'm sitting in my car, but I'm in North Lemon right now. I hate these animals so much when they're in my town and in my garden. But over here in North Lemon, they're actually kind of pretty. And I know as soon as I get out of the car, they'll go scampering away. But look at that. So I'm not going to get out of the car, I'm just going to let them be. But wow. And of course, that doe was in front of the buck. Trying to rest my arm on my seat, and I'm so zoomed in, I'm all over the place here. Okay, here she comes. Let's oops, there we go. There's him. Just starting to grow his antlers. And here comes that's him again. There's another one. I mean, they are pretty. Zoom out slightly. Maybe a little more. There we go. So very pretty. But destructive. They are not good for gardens. I don't mind when the little bunny comes along and he takes a little nibble here and there. Because he's little, he doesn't take big nibbles. These things, oh baby. Oh God, here comes another one. So, yeah, little bonus. I don't have the microphone plugged in, so I don't know what kind of audio you're getting, but wasn't this fun? All right, so let's get going. So, yeah, I recorded those deer. That narration was taken as I sat in my car. It just, I don't know, I just wanted to share it. They're right there in town in the lovely city of North Lemon. So the kids that live in North Lemon, of course, go to high school in Lemon, South Dakota. They cross the state line. Where I live, we actually get kids from South Dakota. You know, it's just when you're a border town, that's what happens. When I lived in Pennsylvania, one of the places I lived, actually kids from New York State went to school in Pennsylvania. I lived in a house for a while where the foot of our driveway was right on the New York State line. The edge of our property was the New York State, Pennsylvania border. Kind of cool. I was a little young then to appreciate it, but that's where we were. So, anyway, I'm going to interrupt myself a little bit as I tour through Lemon. We're back in a first world country again. We're back in Lemon. So I've thought a little bit about that whole employment thing. Oh, I'm going to interrupt myself again. What the hell? This up here is the Lemon School. The high school and the elementary school are two different buildings. Inefficient when you're this small of a school, but it is what it is. I mean, they were probably bigger at one time and it made sense. But one thing I kind of like about Lemon is they kept the old school. This is an addition on it here to your right. No, the church is not part of the school. This is a public school. But they kept the old building. One of the things that's very popular in North and South Dakota is tearing down old buildings. Now, in fairness, old here isn't old like it is on the East Coast. There, that's the old part of the building. Old here might be 100 years old, and honestly, a lot of what's old was not very well built, so it's not really necessarily that salvageable. And a lot of these old buildings bring some problems. Like, I was in one school here in North Dakota. I won't embarrass them by giving their name, but it's an old two-story building like that, but it's built kind of on a hillside, so they built it in half levels. So to get into the bathrooms, you actually have to climb a flight of stairs. You get to the top of the stairs, there's the door to the bathroom. There's a separate flight of stairs for the boys' bathroom and for the girls' bathroom. And the reason is, so I'm guessing the architect thought, well, we got to have some windows in this here downstairs classroom. So yeah, there's classrooms underneath that level. So that's why I said it's all half levels. And yet, you don't have to climb stairs to get into any classrooms, which is even odder. I'll tell you just have to tour that school for yourself. It's a North Dakota one. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you their name, so I don't embarrass them or possibly get an ADA lawsuit against them. We'll let that happen naturally. But if you renovate, how do you work around that? You visit Mott. I don't mind mentioning Mott because they are fixing the situation. Many additions, and the old part of the building has many, like half flights of steps and so on. Chair lifts all over the place. And it wasn't that well built to begin with. So what they've done, they finally came up with, well, we just got to tear this thing down. There is no fixing this thing. Buffalo, South Dakota, tore their old school down, built a new one. Admittedly, Buffalo was dealing with some structural issues that may not have been fixable. Ma is dealing with infrastructure issues. You know, if you have an old building, you're dealing with old pipes, old wiring, old heating systems. And sometimes they are just too expensive to repair. Or, case of McLean County Courthouse, which is in Washburn, North Dakota, they ended up tearing that one down, even though it was a historical building, and there was actually a lawsuit to prevent it getting torn down, because they had a bat problem. What was it? Toxoplasmosis, I think? Whatever it is that's in bat droppings, all inside the walls. And it was not a well-built building. You know, I love old buildings, but I do recognize that sometimes they have to go. And of course, a lot of the old buildings were cheap wooden buildings. Maybe they had a facade on them. But, this part of the country just hasn't been settled as long as the East Coast. So we don't have the wealth of old buildings. Now, I'm living in an older home for my town in the 1930s. It's not one of your cute cottage type homes that all the people love to restore, but it's old for here. That was a big long tangent I got into. Sorry, I totally got off the topic. I love touring small towns. It's just a weird thing I do. We're gonna go past 2 more yet on this trip, and then next video we'll go into McLaughlin, South Dakota, but we'll go through Morristown and Watauga. Yeah, I've toured them. Not on this trip, but I have in the past. Anyway, so I got to thinking about, back on the main topic, that basic income thing. What really would be a good luxury? Do I keep getting paid more? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I'd like that I can't afford because of how much I make. But really, is it going to make me happier other than that moment I acquire? I mean, I'd love to have a Nikaya pen. I've got the one I want picked out. I've saved for it once, and then I changed my mind. Couldn't spend that much on a pen because a lot of money. But, and that's actually related to the topic, so that was not a tangent there. But what really is a luxury? Well, I'll tell you one of the big luxuries of teaching. Yes, I put in a lot of time in the summer preparing classes. I was working on 2 new courses I'll be teaching next year today, even though I'm not getting paid for it. But one of the big perks of teaching, honestly, the summer's off. Now, I would like to change the school year so that break is shorter and spread out through the year in small batches, so you get like a fall break, winter break, and so on. But still, that is a big perk of this job, is the time off, because it gives me time for pursuing my interests, because during the school year, I have a lot less time to do a lot of the things I'd like to do. Which is why the bathroom that I renovated in August is still not 100% done. Although now that I'm done planting the garden and all that, I'm actually finishing it finally. But free time. So I thought to myself, what about, since every worker is more productive now, what about reducing work hours? Don't reduce pay, just reduce work hours. Now, I don't have a magic number to how much. Maybe instead of a typical 40-hour week, we reduce to a 35-hour week, which, by the way, would increase the number of jobs available, too, by a slight amount. For some reason, the number 10 floats in my head, but I don't know why. But why not reduce work hours? I really hate it when I'm at school till forever, several nights a week, because of after school commitments. And then I come home and it's just like, oh, I don't really want to do anything. And then I don't. And some people are working 60, 80 hours a week at their combination of jobs just to scrape by. I have a problem with that. But if you have more free time, and you're not so worried about money, then you have time to do things like create that park of petrified wood in Lemon. You have time to volunteer in your community. You have time to pursue your own interests. For a totally unrelated project that you won't see on YouTube because it's not a YouTube project, it's a local project that I've been working on, I was discussing the word craftsman. By the way, I think we just went through Thunderhawk and I didn't notice. Thunderhawk is nothing. It's a very, yeah, we did. It's a very, very small town with a really, really cool name. I don't even know how many people live in it because I couldn't find that data. But anyway, I just think of a future of craftsmen or women. The word craftsman fit in my other thing I've been working on locally. When you're a craftsman, you'll do high quality work of passion. not necessarily for profit, but because of the thrill of doing it. I don't make. Yes, I do know I monetize the channel, but I don't get any money off of YouTube. I don't make enough money. I mostly wanted to see the statistics. I do these videos for fun, not for money. And that's what a craftsman is. There are programmers. They do their job programming and doing their computer thing for whatever big business, computery business they work for. And then they'll go home and they will work on open source software just for fun. That's how Linux came to be. I'm actually part of an open source software project called Lyx, Lyx. You can find my name on their website. Not a programmer really. I got a small part of the program going by creating a really bad layout. Good programmers came in and made it decent. But hey, and it's a part of the program I use a lot. Whenever I see that, I'm like, yeah, that's me. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, if you have time to create, how wonderful. And, honestly, downtowns are dying because a lot of people like the big box stores. And a lot of businesses, more than the people, a lot of businesses like the big box stores because it's more efficient than a downtown location. So as downtowns die, I like the idea of filling them up with craftsmen, exhibits, maybe consignment shops, little restaurants, little cafes and such. Because one of the things I think is missing in a lot of the big box retailers is that community that a downtown has. I'll be honest, when I first moved to Bowman, what I loved about the town was everything was right there on Main Street. And the first few years living here, it was awesome because you'd walk downtown because it's not a super small town, but it's small enough I could walk it. You'd run into people on the street as you're walking up and down the street doing your business. The big box retailers just don't have that same feel. And that's what I would like to bring back. In fact, I was watching a video about, doggone, I forgot the name of the town. It's in Mississippi, so now I have to go find it. But a couple this is Morristown, South Dakota. It's a town of about 69 people. I've toured it before, but not on this trip. Anyway, they were just amazed by how cheap these abandoned buildings on Main Street were. And they started restoring them, and they put in things like an art gallery and so on. See, now we're out of Morristown. They put in things like an art gallery and different cafes and office space and so on. And really brought the community back. I really like that Main Street model. Whenever I go for a job, I like to walk a town. And one of the things I do is I walk the main street. I'll tell you one of my favorite main streets, now that mine has started to dry up, one of my favorite main streets in all of North Dakota is a little town called New Rockford, North Dakota. I won't teach there because their pay is terrible for teachers. But what a nice downtown. It's not a traditional like Lemon, both sides are lined with shops. It's kind of L-shaped and it's around a park, and actually the railroad runs parallel to Main Street, which is part of the park. But just such a cool downtown. Snow fence there on your right. That's to keep the snow from roaming into the road. Apparently this is a location that drifts a lot, but that fence hasn't been repaired in a while. I'm guessing they must not have had much snow lately. Well, it's been kind of dry lately. But anyway, that's what I envision. Gathering places for people, maybe little concerts. I used to live in one little town of about 500 people. They would do music in the park every week. Only in the summer, of course, because it's North Dakota. But that's really cool. Give local musicians a chance to perform. I'd kind of like to make it part of the Main Street thing, put the park on Main Street and so on, but, they were doing, it made sense. It was something to bring people together, to build that sense of community. And speaking of communities, they are not as close together as my selective cuts have made it feel, but this is Watauga, South Dakota. This is a town of 29 people. But anyway, that's part of my utopia, is we have more free time and the income to pursue interests. Maybe you like cooking, maybe you're a gardener, maybe you work with wood, maybe you make fountain pens, maybe you write poetry, maybe you're an artist, maybe you're a musician. Wouldn't it be nice to have the time to work on that instead of working your job all the time and coming home and too exhausted to pursue your interests? I look at people who've retired kind of for inspiration for this idea, because that's where it came from. Some people, they retire from their job and then they're dead in a couple of months. Or they just sit around at home and they're bored, and it's just like, well, what is my point in living now? But then the really inspiring ones are these people, which I imagine a lot of that park was created by in Lemon. They retire, and now they finally have the time to pursue their interests. I know a math teacher who retired. He now does a lot of wood turning. I may have the wrong word for it. He makes cool stuff out of wood, really fancy, nice stuff. People that pursue carpentry, people become cabinet makers, really custom cabinets now that they're retired. I just think that's so cool. They finally have the time to do that and the financial resources to do it because they planned adequately for retirement. Wouldn't it be nice if you could get a start on that as a employee? If you had the time to pursue your interests and you weren't so worn out from everything. Now, create this utopia, there's a couple things that would have to happen. One of them, and perhaps the libertarians in the audience better cover their ears for this part of the video. We need to have adequate health care. We can't have people going into debt for health care or forking over a huge chunk of their paycheck just to pay health insurance. I hate to say it, but Canada and Sweden and Norway may have a better solution than the United States. We need to have a good retirement system. Social Security was a good idea. Some creative things we have done with bookkeeping is kind of ruining that. And we're finding that Social Security really, most parts of the country, is not adequate to retire on. We need to have retirement. Some people will say, why do teachers get to have this wonderful pension? That's not fair. And my response is, why shouldn't everybody have that? And you need that in order to retire. Everybody should be paid a living wage. Yeah, that means some businesses are just going to have to pay more, and maybe their shareholders don't get as much business or much income. I think, honestly, just for the sake of family, we need to have good maternity and paternity leave. A mother will get, I can't remember how many weeks it is in this state, but they can get some maternity leave, not paid, of course, but what about the fathers? Aren't they part of the family too? So we need to have that. And I would like it to be paid. So you can actually spend time bonding with your kid and developing as a family. So you're ready to go back to work. Because honestly, when that kid is first born, you need that time. If you know new parents and the hours, the weird hours they have to put in taking care of that newborn baby, yeah, they're not at their most productive as workers. And honestly, our education system, this is what kicked all this off, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it today. But our education system needs to start preparing people for this new world. We need to encourage creativity, critical thinking, those universal thinking skills you can take from job to job. And 12th grade shouldn't be the end of it. We need to offer it to adults as well. And I think college is too expensive. We can't have people graduating college with a massive amount of debt that shackles them as they're trying to start their new lives. Honest to God, although I do kind of regret sometimes moving to North Dakota, I wouldn't have done it if I would have had student debt. I was lucky because my parents sacrificed a bunch, because we weren't rich people by any means. My parents sacrificed a bunch to pay for my college, my brother's college. If I had to pay off student debt, there's no way I would have come to a state like North Dakota where I get paid with the salary North Dakota has. It just wouldn't have been financially feasible. And I look at my colleagues trying to pay off student debt and I just think, that's terrible. They are shackled by that. They want to start their lives, but they can't because so much of their income is going to student debt. That situation has to be dealt with. And when you're older, you need that education. Your job becomes obsolete. You want to change professions. And I think we need to have more options, especially in a rural state like North Dakota. I can't just run to the university for classes. Sorry about that. After work. Be glad I pressed pause there. Wow, that was a nice coughing session. I can't just run to the university for classes after work because Dickinson University is the closest one. That's 90 minutes away. So 3 hours total round trip? Oh, hell no. So especially a state like this, maybe online options need to be more available. But we need to take care of that older segment of the population so that they can have job retraining. And honestly, our prisons need to have that too, but that's another story for another time. So yeah, the education needs to be worked on. Now, yes, my utopia is going to have issues. Like I said, we're people. There is no such thing as utopia unless everybody has to have a lobotomy, which that's more dystopian than utopian. There is a wage gap in this country, and somehow that has to be dealt with. How much money do you need? I'm not a believer in trickle-down economics. I have not seen evidence that it actually works. I know people will talk about Ronald Reagan like he's some kind of a god, but honestly, I have not seen evidence that it works. Oh, shoot, I was hoping this wouldn't happen. We are now in the town of McIntosh, South Dakota. Now, I remember somewhere along here I pulled off. So when I pull off here, I will do my tour of South Dakota, or of McIntosh. Now I'm going to have to go find it. And, yeah. And then I will finish up this thought. Doggone. I was hoping McIntosh would fit in with my last leg of the trip. Well, McIntosh I did not look up, but I remember it's right around 400 people. It's a small town. It is, I guess you could call it the county seat of Corson County. In fact, you will see in my video that I stopped the car to take a picture of the courthouse because I'm part of a group that's trying to collect pictures of courthouses, of all the courthouses in the United States, and this is one of the ones that was missing, because guess how many people tour McIntosh, South Dakota. So since I live here, I decided to do, well, we're past McIntosh. I'm just going to give you the tour right now. So, of course, this is all filmed a week earlier. And there you just saw a hint of why I'm not using that footage, except for the town tours. But anyway, McIntosh is small, and yeah. So actually, McIntosh has a kind of a cool looking small town main street. I don't know if I'd want to live there, but it is kind of a neat little town. And the reason I said whatever it is, I'm not 100% certain that McIntosh is a county seat. I believe it has a different name. Now, most of them in South Dakota are, of course, counties, but I think it has something to do with the reservation. I don't know if McIntosh is on the reservation or just on the edge, but I think that has something to do with why it goes by a different name. But getting back to some of my issues with Utopia, we do have to deal with the wage gap. Another one we honestly are going to have to deal with and it's going to be a problem no matter what. There are some lazy people that will take advantage of the system. Hey, I don't have to work? Dandy, then I won't. And, Ronald Reagan, part of his whole thing was campaigning against welfare queens. People here get upset about Californian welfare. They forget that California actually pays its way, which North Dakota does not, except for 1 year. California pays more in federal income taxes than it takes back from the federal government. North Dakota, on the other hand, gets more money from the federal government than it pays. A lot of people locally don't realize that, but that's a side issue. But yeah, there used to be horror stories about these welfare queens that would show up for their welfare check in a Cadillac. It's there will be people that take advantage of my utopian system. No matter what kind of utopia we create, there will be people who take advantage. And there's always going to be exceptions. Do we just give up because of the exceptions? Because somebody might take advantage. By golly, nobody gets nice things. I say no. I'll just put that out there. So yeah, these will be problems. And I don't care what utopia you propose. Somebody's going to get left behind. That's the courthouse that I photographed. In fact, you'll even see me photographing it because I left the car running while I did so. But, you go with the libertarian utopia where everybody pays their own way and we're just, anyway. And then the question becomes, well, what about those who are unable for whatever reason? Unable to work, get sick, get old, never made enough money and now they are too old to work. What do you do for them? And that's why I think I'm a little more humane. In some ways I can be conservative, but I'm a lot less conservative than I used to be because I thought about things like that. And I've looked at, the research. I haven't come up with good answers on the libertarian side. I know some people say, well, I've got mine, you go get your own. What if you can't? I just think in a civilized society we need to take care of the weakest members. And people say, well, I don't like being forced to. I'll donate to my church. And they can do it. Well, will you? Did that system work? That'd be another good topic for a video. And I want to close this with a little message of hope. And here's my little message of hope. In a lot of ways, right now, as of the date when I record this, we're living in utopia. And a lot of people don't realize that. Crime rates are way down nationwide. We have more access to education. There's less wars going on. The technology in the current day is amazing. The medicines are amazing right now. The availability of information. The fact that you're watching a video filmed in McIntosh, South Dakota, by a guy from North Dakota, wherever the heck it is you're at, that's pretty darn amazing. The ability to meet people online that you never would have met. So you're exposed to diverse viewpoints, which has been really good for some of these more insular areas, like where I live, where people were not exposed to the outside just because of regional isolation. Now, thanks to the internet, they are exposed to what's going on in the outside world. Now, we have kind of created our little caves and bunkers on the internet. You know, I'm only going to go to Fox News, only going to go to WorldNet Daily, only going to go to Huffington Post. But in general, we are more exposed to what's going on elsewhere. And I won't say we've solved a lot of social issues, but we are at least aware that certain minorities don't enjoy the privileges that other groups do enjoy. My country, not too long ago, finally legalized gay marriage. Why shouldn't two people who are in love be allowed to marry? In the 20th century, there were laws in some states in this country against people of different races. I'm using air quotes as I say that. Marrying. Now, if somebody were to say, hey, you know, I don't think two different races should mix, the majority of the country, even if they do still have racist attitudes, is going to be like, whoa, why not? Yes, there are people that honestly think that skin color has something to do with intelligence. But, by the way, we just went around the McIntosh school, which I don't know its enrollment because I don't know McIntosh or South Dakota in general very well. But it's small. But anyway, we have at least awareness. We're heading in the right direction. Not there yet. This country has a long way to go, and honestly, the Neanderthals among us who have very backwards ideas on race and religion have felt emboldened by the recent presidential election. Whether that's fair or not, they felt that way. Which is not necessarily a slam at Trump, although it probably could be. So now I'm back in my current footage, headed toward McLaughlin. But anyway, we are living one of the best times in human history, honestly. Not perfect, but definitely improving. And I think that is a message of hope for the future. And my hope is we continue to evolve. We have fewer people who are creationists. I think that is a very healthy thing because just outright, I don't really care if you're religious, but denying reality in favor of what you think your Bronze Age book of myths is telling you, I have a big problem with that. So that's a healthy thing in society. We actually have what they call the rise of the nuns, and I might have not N-U-N-S, N-O-N-E-S, but I might have to do a video on that one of these days. But in general, we are valuing science and knowledge and facts more. We're not as far as we need to be, but we're getting there. And I think it's wonderful that when you live in a place like this, you're no longer isolated from the world. I think if it weren't for the availability of information, I would be a very different person. Thanks to living in a time, and I grew up before the internet was really a thing, but thanks to living in a time when the internet's available, I'm a much more open-minded and well-rounded person than I otherwise would have been. I don't have much time left. So I'll pick you up somewhere close to here. Probably I'll start right at the tail end of this. Here's the spot where I pulled off. Holy cow. I don't remember why I pulled off here, though. Well, looks like I got out of the car, too. Well, anyway, on hopefully a cheerier note, I will leave you. And we'll pick this up around here sometime next week. And I don't have a topic yet, but I'll come up with one. So see you later. Bye-bye.